Look, there are a lot of things going on with the Memphis Grizzlies right now, and one of the biggest on the court hurdles has been an 8-game losing streak on the road. No longer. The Grizzlies snapped the 8-game losing streak on the road by beating the Houston Rockets. We're going to talk about that game. We're going to talk about John Morant, Desmond Bain. We're going to talk about the third quarter Grizzlies and much more. So don't go anywhere. Coming up right here, right now on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host for today, Damichael Cole, beat writer at the Commercial Appeal here in Memphis, Tennessee. Taking today to myself, co-host, giving my co-host Joe Mullinax, a well-deserved day off. Props to Joe. He's been working so hard. As most of you knew, while I took some time off due, to situation with the family, but took some time off. Glad to be back. Happy to be back, kind of in the full swing of things here. And Joe's been great, holding it down. Great, and just grateful for a great partner like himself. But thank you all here for tuning in today to Locked On Grizzlies. We appreciate you all, and just remember that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. FanDuel Sportsbook is the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit fanduel.com/locked on today to get started. Before we get started today, we're going to go ahead and state the obvious, right? We're going to go ahead and throw the elephant in the room out there. There's so much things going on around the Grizzlies, in particular with the star of the team, John Morant. The good. John Morant became the first player in more than 5 years, first athlete, period, in more than 5 years to earn a sponsorship with Powerade. I wrote a story you can check out on commercialappeal.com just that. Honor for John Morant. Congratulations to John Morant on earning that opportunity with Powerade. They had the commercial with he and T Morant, and from what I'm hearing, much more is on the way with that, duo, Powerade and John Morant going forward. So they're making him the face of their brand. So excited to see, how that looks for him going forward. It looks like we're just going to see more and more of John Morant on TV, off the floor. And speaking of off the floor, the bad is, the Washington Post, another report kind of came out, indicating, some incidents going on around John Morant and whatnot. Won't say too much there. I'll just say, hey, we have a story out, commercialappeal.com. You can go check that out. In that story, it kind of confirms one of the incidents that's indicated in the Washington Post's report. The mall incident is confirmed in that story. And also there are the comments from the agency of John Morant, who strongly, stand against some of the things that have been said about John Morant. I think some of the words that the agency used were irresponsible and defamatory to describe, some of the things being said against John Morant lately. But now that we got some of that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about basketball here. And on the floor with the Grizzlies, as the game started, they took on the Houston Rockets. The Rockets have the worst record in the NBA. So this is a game that the Grizzlies were supposed to win, right? Yeah, they beat the Rockets. So what? Do I need to remind you? March 6th, 2022, last season. I don't know if you remember that day, but I remember it very well because I had to talk to the players after that game. And Kevin Porter, Jalen Green combined for 53 points in that game to upset the Grizzlies. And the Rockets also had the worst record in the league at that time. The Grizzlies were also on the second night of a back-to-back in that game as well. So there were kind of some parallels. Early March game, Kevin Porter was back for the Rockets after missing some time. So yeah, Kevin Porter, Jalen Green backcourt, the Grizzlies players, were very, aware of what Sagoon has done in the paint this season. They wanted to make him a point of emphasis as well. So records aside, the Grizzlies knew that there was a challenge to be presented in this game, and there was a challenge. More than anything, the Grizzlies have an 8-game losing streak, had an 8-game losing streak on the road. A lot of those losses were to good opponents. I think I can name all 8 off the top of my head here, being that I went on that road trip, and then the last 3 were to 3 good Eastern Conference teams. Let's see if I can name them off the top of my head here. We got, I think it was the Lakers, it was the Suns, it was the Kings, it was Golden State, it was Minnesota. That's the first 5. And then it was the Cavs, the Sixers, and the Celtics. That's all 8. Cavs, Sixers, and Celtics are all top 5 in the Eastern Conference. Lakers game got away from the Grizzlies there, and the other teams that I mentioned are all really really good at home. Kings, Warriors, Timberwolves, Suns, all really good teams on their home floors. So there's no shame in losing to really solid teams like they did, but it was a concern seeing the Grizzlies struggle at the way they have. But now, second night of a back-to-back, John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., Desmond Bane all have big nights. Dillon Brooks did too. We're going to talk more about him specifically later on in the show, so make sure you stay tuned for that. I think we got some good stuff later on for Dillon Brooks. But just to dive into the numbers a little bit here, at the starting lineup, John Morant, 20 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, didn't play a minute in the fourth quarter. Right, the Grizzlies slow start in this game, 47-44 lead at halftime, shooting under 40%, but they were holding the Rockets under 40% shooting as well. Rebounding was an issue. The Grizzlies kind of cleaned those things up a little bit, and they started shooting the ball, at an insane clip, in the third quarter, and that carried on into the fourth. A bunch of guys shot well, most notably Desmond Bane, 6 of 9 on 3-pointers. If you remember, Desmond Bane had been slumping a little bit lately. And when I say slumping, by Desmond Bane's standards, that's making 5 3-pointers over a 3-game stretch. He did shoot, I think, like 5 of 21, over that time. But 6 of 9 in this game, and he got hot. Led the Grizzlies with 30 points. I believe that's the 5th time this season he has topped the 30-point mark. So big game for Desmond Bane. Ja goes 27-7. In 3 quarters of play. Jaren Jackson Jr. as well, 17 points, 6 of 12 shooting. He also knocked down a couple threes, but then, those 5 blocks. Like, the guy's he's incredible on that defensive end. I think, he keeps playing at this level. He's going to eventually pull away, and we won't be having much of a conversation about if he wins it. It'll just be how much of a landslide that will be at the end of the day. Xavier Tillman Sr. got the start at center. I think he was all right, but this wasn't the game that kind of showcased him, as much. This was more of a Brandon Clark matchup. What we've learned is, some games Brandon Clark has been more tailored, matchup-wise, and in others, it's been Xavier Tillman Sr. So, for example, in this game, Brandon Clark plays about 7 less minutes than Xavier Tillman Sr., finished +9, while Xavier Tillman Sr. finished +5 in this game. And a lot of that was, the third quarter. Brandon Clark didn't get to start in the game, but Taylor Jenkins started him in the third quarter. A lot of you talk about Taylor Jenkins and the adjustments and things like that. We're going to talk more about the third quarter in a little while, but those are the main things that stood out. But the Grizzlies shot the basketball well. When Memphis can shoot 3-pointers, it's not too many teams that are going to beat them. 17 of 41. That's 41.5% from 3-point range. And again, it was Dez for sure. Dez made 6 3-pointers, but you got 4 from Dillon Brooks. You got a couple, from Jaren Jackson Jr. as well. You got a couple off the bench from Tyus Jones. The Grizzlies knocked down 3-pointers. They're going to be tough to beat. That's the area they struggle. We talk about that Lakers game, right? The Grizzlies made 6 3-pointers in that Lakers game and pulled away late because they had 86 paint points. Just to put in perspective how incredible it is to have 86 paint points. The Grizzlies finished this game, I think, with 44 paint points, but the 3-point shooting was out of this world. When Memphis shoots the basketball like that, and I will add that Houston, very subpar defense. I mean, it's get what you want. It's get what you want. It's like going to the store with your rich cousin, and they tell you, hey, buy everything you want. I've never went to the store with my rich cousin. I've seen it on TV though, so some of you may know what I'm talking about. But that's what it felt like. In this situation, it was get what you want. The Grizzlies got what shots they wanted. John Morant got to the rim. Desmond Bain got 3-point looks. He made a couple tough ones. He made some easy ones. He did a couple of those flyby 3-pointers. Jaren Jackson Jr. got some easy looks. Dylan Brooks got some rhythm shots as well that got him going, in that third quarter. Overall, very effective night and an encouraging performance for a lot of guys. But the most encouraging thing probably was the third quarter. The Grizzlies have done it again. We're going to talk more in detail why this team has been so good in the third quarter of this season. But before we get to that, I want to talk to you about FanDuel. See, FanDuel is one of those options that you can take advantage of what the Grizzlies do in the third quarter. FanDuel is one of the best options, is the premier, sports book out there to take advantage of, betting odds and things like that. At the end of the day, we're way past the midway point of the NBA season. We're getting towards the last stretch. And now you got to take advantage of America's number one sports book in FanDuel. Remember this, though. New customers, you can get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's right. You're a new customer. You want to go out there and bet $1,000. You can get a no sweat bet. It'll all come right back to you. $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. How the bonus bets work is that money will be redistributed back into your bonus account, so you can't cash it out back into your bank account immediately, but you can use that 1,000 in bets to replay some more money if your bet doesn't win. So go take advantage of some of these things. Remember, the thing about it is FanDuel gives you so many options. You got the spread, you got the money line where you're just picking the winner. Player props are my favorite thing. FanDuel has a 10-point options with the odds. If you want to predict the player to score 10 points, 15 points, 20 points, and does the same thing with rebounds, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 rebounds. Same thing with assists. You can put you a nice same game parlay together as well and make you some real good money. Take advantage of this chance on FanDuel. Make every moment more with FanDuel. It's the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk about the third quarter Grizzlies. They've kind of made their signature this season. So let's talk about it more. Coming up right after the break. The Grizzlies have done it again. 2 games ago against the Lakers. Playing all right. Okay in the first quarter. Yeah, okay in the second quarter. Then boom. Ja Morant, 28-point third quarter, franchise record. Grizzlies pull away. It was similar in this Rockets game. First half, ho-hum. Grizzlies shooting under 40%. Rockets shooting under 40%. 47-44 at halftime. It's a snooze fest. Then the third quarter comes. Brandon Clark starts at center in place of Xavier Tillman Sr. I'm like, okay, what Taylor Jenkins got cooking up here? And then boom. Desmond Bain, three-pointer. Ja Morant, double-digit scoring third quarter. Dylan Brooks, cooking. Jaren Jackson Jr., get that out of here. All of it. The third quarter had it all, and before the quarter ended, the Grizzlies went from entering the quarter winning by 3 points to leaving the quarter up 17 going into the fourth. This has become almost an expected thing. I wrote about it yesterday on the Commercial Appeal, so you can check out that story as well if you want. Just a little bit more detail on why the Grizzlies have kind of separated themselves in becoming this third quarter team. And you know what I learned? They know it. They know that the third quarter is, become this big quarter for them. But it's not like, hey, it's the third quarter, it's our time to shine. I don't think it's that. Xavier Tillman straight up told me, no, no, we don't look at it like that. But it's more just about exactly what you think. It's adjustments. It's playing a half, learning how you know players are guarded, how teams uh you know distribute their rotations and personnel and things like that, and adjusting. And the Grizzlies are one of the best teams, if not the best, at doing that, because this isn't a 1 year thing. I went back and looked. It's just under Taylor Jenkins, pretty much. The Grizzlies have been top 10 in net rating in the third quarter. This year, number 2. Oklahoma City Thunder is the only team ahead. You know why Oklahoma City Thunder is the only team ahead? Shea Gilgeous-Alexander leads the NBA in third quarter scoring. Ja Morant, not too far behind. He is third in the NBA right now in third quarter scoring. And Ja Morant is a big reason why the Grizzlies are so good in the third quarter. I was looking at his numbers. Really good first quarter score. He's in the top 10. Second and fourth quarter, decent numbers, but he takes, big breaks at the beginning of those quarters if you watch the Grizzlies and how they use their rotations. He plays most of the first and third quarters, but there's pretty much a 2-point gap in points averaged from the first quarter to the third quarter. And it's noticeable. But Ja Morant, third in NBA in points per game in that third quarter. And if you just watch the way he plays, he is probably the biggest reason in terms of this third quarter jump that we've seen, the Grizzlies go on. Because at this point of Ja Morant's career, he's seen every coverage. He's been blitzed. He's been doubled. He's been, they go under screens, they've gone over screens, they've hard heads, they've soft heads. Ja Morant has seen all of this at this point of his NBA career. But it's still a learning curve. It's still a learning curve because there's a difference when you're guarded by a 6'7" wing, a 6'1" guy, 6'2" guy, and some nights even like a Jalen McDaniels, on the Minnesota Timberwolves. But Ja Morant is guarded by a bunch of different type of defenders. The front courts are different, right? Some teams are blessed to have 2 6'10" guys with 7 feet plus wingspans waiting on Ja Morant at the rim. Some teams, don't have as much size, but they have athletic guys who can jump, who can, position themselves pretty well. Just each team's dynamic is set up a little bit differently. And I think Ja, in some cases, has to adjust to that. And when the third quarter hits, he's a smart guy. He knows. He knows what to do. And he puts his head down and it's on. I just going back to the Lakers game a couple days ago. In the simplest form, Ja Morant calls it cat and mouse. You go under the screens, you sag off, he's going to shoot it. If you don't do that, he's going to attack the rim and you're too slow. You can't stay in front of him. Pick your poison. I remember in that third quarter, the Lakers weren't exactly pressing up on Ja Morant, but what happened was Ja realized I can't buy a three. So let me go to the rim. And then he was like, wait a minute. These guys can't stop me at the rim, even though they're sagging off of me a little bit. They're going under the screens. They still can't stop me. So I'm going to keep going to the rim. And that's how that worked out for him. Now in this game, again, double-digit scoring third quarter, but not, out of this world, so to say. It was a lot of Desmond Bane. It was a lot of Dylan Brooks. And, just look at the numbers here. 3 guys with 11 or more points in the third quarter. Ja finished the third quarter 11 points, 4 of 7 shooting. Desmond Bane, 5 of 6 shooting, 12 points. Dylan Brooks, 4 of 5 shooting, 11 points. Those 3 guys alone combined for 34 points in the third quarter as the Grizzlies outscored Houston 38-24 in that frame. And just to put in perspective how this game went, the Grizzlies won the first quarter by 6 points. The Rockets won the second quarter and the fourth quarter by 3 points. So if you take this game just in totality, the first, second, and fourth quarters evenly scored. The third quarter, The Grizzlies won by 14 in the third quarter, and they won the overall game, 113-99. They won the game by 14 points. The third quarter has been a separator, not just as of late. It's been a separator all season. And before we change the topic here, I do want to mention everyone's favorite thing to talk about at this point, and not favorite in a good way, I don't think, but something that people like to talk about is, okay, the Grizzlies are struggling in the fourth quarter. Why doesn't this translate to the fourth quarter? They're right. The Grizzlies, I think, at last I checked, that meant before this game against the Rockets, they were 29th in the NBA in net rating in the fourth quarter. That's compared to being, top 5 net rating in all the other quarters. I mean, top 10 net rating in all the other quarters. So there's a substantial drop off. And there's also the minutes, right? We talk about John Morant, not playing, a bunch of minutes, in the fourth quarter. And Desmond Bain starting the quarter, Jaren Jackson Jr. starting the quarter, but taking a break, towards the middle of the quarter and things like that, where we see other teams kind of ride their stars. See, it works in the second quarter. The teams aren't riding their stars the way they will in the fourth quarter, and they want their guys playing those long minutes. But the Grizzlies kind of haven't jumped on that wave yet, right? The Grizzlies stick to their rotation. They pride themselves on depth. So sometimes it's good, sometimes it'll burn you. And that's what we've seen so far this season. Speaking of something that could burn you, Dillon Brooks gets one more technical foul. It's probably going to burn him and the Grizzlies. We're going to talk more about that coming up after the break. So Dillon Brooks, we talking about how good he was in this game, and it was needed, right? Dillon Brooks is coming off a month where he shot below 30% from three-point range. I think he shot 28% overall from three-point range, and just overall was an inefficient player. His offensive level in February was very concerning, to say the least. And most of if you've followed Locked On Grizzlies for a while, and if you've followed, kind of my opinion, as you would say, on Dillon Brooks and what he brings to the table. I've been an advocate of Dillon Brooks because I say all the time, what he adds to this team's wing defense, you can deal with, some of the shots. You can say, hey, look, this guy is guarding Brandon Ingram, Devin Booker, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, Jamal Murray, the list goes on. He's guarding all these guys. Zion Williams. He guarded Zion Williams. He guarded Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Held him under 32 times. Like, he's guarding all these guys. At some point, you can deal with, the inefficiencies from time to time. But going back to the month of February, and really January too. In January, February just were two big struggles for Dillon Brooks. 34.9% shooting in February overall. And I mentioned the 28% shooting, from three-point range. Overall, a 45.4 total shooting percentage, which was bad. And the thing that stood out to me the most about February, a lot of people mentioned this as well. And I know me, Joe Mullinax, we would mention it on the podcast. His usage rating went down. For perspective here, started the season in October, 27.1% usage rating. That meant you were getting a lot of Dillon Brooks. Then it was 25.1%, 24.4%. In January, he went down to 20.2%. How about all the way down to 16% usage rating in February? A lot of spot-up shots, very simple stuff. The occasional, Dillon Brooks pounded 4 dribbles into the ground, wild shot, but not a lot. Still, offensive rating in January and February were below 100. Even in October, November, December, he had an offensive rating of at least 100. So he's been struggling. He only averaged 9 points per game in February. Dillon Brooks was great against the Rockets. March started and he played phenomenal. And I say it all the time. When Dillon Brooks plays efficient basketball, the Grizzlies win. I don't know how else to say it. The Grizzlies win. When Dillon Brooks is efficient. And not only do they win, I've said this in the past. The thing about it, when Dillon Brooks plays efficient basketball, not only do the Grizzlies win games, they beat the socks off of you. They blow teams out when Dillon Brooks is healthy. And it just to give you perspective here, not when he's healthy, excuse me, when he plays efficient basketball. Let's draw the line at 50% shooting. When Dylan Brooks shoots 50% this season, I'm going to go through the entire list of games. The Grizzlies have won. They beat the Suns by 25, beat Charlotte by 31, beat Charlotte by 24, won another game by 18 points against Denver, beat Atlanta by 25, beat the Pelicans by 21, beat Minnesota by 11, beat the Knicks by 4 points, beat the Bucks by 41, beat the Toronto Raptors by 13, beat the Suns by 30, beat the Timberwolves by 21. Those are the games where Dylan Brooks has shot over 50% or better and the Grizzlies won. Only one time have the Grizzlies lost this season when Dylan Brooks shot 50% or better. And that one game, a 1-point loss where the Utah Jazz made 19 three-pointers. It took 19 threes and a 1-point loss. And I believe John Morant didn't play in that game too. But that's what it took for that's the one time. If Dylan Brooks plays efficient basketball, championship contender. No doubt about it. That's why I think a lot of you are so hard on Dylan Brooks. Because it's like, Ja, he's going to get to the rim. He's going to score. He's been inconsistent at times. We're calling a spade here. John Morant's scoring has, been inconsistent at times. But, Desmond Bane, pure scorer. He's done a great job of being, better all-around offensive skill player this year. Jaren Jackson Jr., the most forceful we've seen him on the offensive end throughout his career to this point. Steven Adams, when healthy, I mean, you've seen it over the past few weeks. You've seen it. I don't have to do the whole, let me tell you how important Steven Adams is and none of you are catching this thing anymore. Those days are gone because we're witnessing it right now as a lot of these teams, including, this past game against the Rockets, as a lot of these teams kind of can beat up on the glass, beat the Grizzlies up on the glass a little bit. The Rockets had 17 offensive rebounds. Newsflash, Steven Adams plays, that doesn't happen. Simple. But the record here, I counted up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and 1 when Dylan Brooks shoots 50% or better this season. Of those 13 wins I called out, only one was by single digits, a 4-point win against the New York Knicks earlier this season. When Dylan Brooks plays efficient, he shoots 50%, the Grizzlies will beat you, and they will beat you bad. And there were some good teams, that I mentioned on that list. We mentioned Denver. We mentioned the Pelicans, the Timberwolves, the Bucks, the Suns twice. And not only are they beating these teams, they're beating them bad. So efficient basketball is important for Dylan Brooks. But also there's one more thing to mention about Dylan Brooks, and that is he picked up his 15th technical foul in this last game. If you know what that means, it means Dylan Brooks can't afford to pick up any more technical fouls if he wants to play every game for the remaining of the season. 16 technical fouls is the line in NBA. If you pick up your 16th technical, there's an automatic 1-game suspension. Dylan Brooks picked up his 15th in the third quarter, of last night's game against the Rockets. So he's one technical away. And I say if he gets it, but like I know, it's a matter of when at this point. When he gets that technical, there's going to be an automatic 1-game suspension issue unless the Grizzlies, be interesting to see if the Grizzlies will try to, appeal any of those technical fouls that he's gotten up to this point. But it seems like a one-game suspension is very likely. I will say this. Lately, Dylan Brooks has done a better job at not, drawing technical fouls as much. And he's become self-aware. I remember we were on the road trip in January and he was talking about it like, hey, look, I'm not trying to, get fined. I'm not trying to get technicals and things like that. Like he knows how many technicals he's had. He's become more self-aware. I remember talking to Taylor Jenkins as well. I asked Taylor Jenkins, hey, do you talk to Dylan Brooks about this? Like, I think this is when he was at like 12 technical fouls. Is there a conversation that has to be had? Like, this is an important defender. And if you look at the way the schedule is setting up, it's a bunch of interesting games left. I saw on Twitter. I wish I could remember who said this. Is I would definitely shout you out. I don't want to think anyone. I don't want anyone to think that I'm stealing, their groove here and talking about it on Locked On Grizzlies. But someone mentioned on Twitter. I thought this was hilarious. It's in regard to Dylan Brooks' technical fouls. They kind of tried to predict when he would get his 16th technical, and the fans said, we all know how this is going to work out, something like that. They said in LA, which is 3 games from now, by the way, the Grizzlies on this upcoming Tuesday will go back to LA. It said Shannon Sharp's going to go to that game. Dylan Brooks, Shannon Sharp are going to have another altercation, a little minor altercation. He'll pick up his 16th technical, and he'll be suspended for the big game coming up against the Warriors on March 9th, that 2 days after that Lakers game. So, if that happens, you are Nostradamus, my friend. But at the end of the day, especially right now, you can't afford for him to pick up that technical no anytime soon. If he picks up that technical against the Nuggets, then he's not going to play against the Clippers. That means you're not going to have Dylan Brooks against Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. If he picks up that technical in the Clippers game, you're going on the road against the Lakers. D'Angelo Russell is close to returning back. Anthony Davis will likely, be available in that game as well. So not a game to overlook. If you pick up that technical against the Warriors, which we've seen, those games can get chippy. You're not going to have him against the Dallas Mavericks on March 11th. That's Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. And I don't have to remind you what Luka did against the Grizzlies earlier this season when Dylan Brooks didn't play. It was nasty work. It was nasty work. And if he doesn't play that first game against Dallas, there's a second following game on March 13th. And if he gets the technical in that game, then guess what? You're playing the Heat and Jimmy Butler after that. And the list goes on all the way down the schedule for the most part. Right now, the Grizzlies are just in the midst of a stretch where they're going to play a bunch of talented wing scorers, a bunch of talented scorers overall in general. You need Dylan Brooks to stay on that floor. We'll see how the villain can contain himself. Now, maybe he'll have to limit some of his villainous ways. He can't afford too many double technicals like he usually gets, and people brush him off. It's a little double tech. It doesn't mean too much. He get a double technical now. He's going to be sitting on the bench. He's going to be suspended for the following game. So that's also something to keep in mind. But overall, more important than anything, the Grizzlies did overcome the big hurdle. They won on the road. Won on the road after losing 8 consecutive games on the road. On tomorrow's episode of Locked On Grizzlies, me and my partner, Joe Mullinex, will be back together with you, and we'll have a lot of things to touch on regarding the Grizzlies. So make sure that you stay tuned for that. But before you tune into that, I want to thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen today. And for your second listen, make game to game NBA, because every moment, every top performance, every result, Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the league with local analysis that Locked On can deliver. All you have to do is go follow Game to Game Locked On. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. Felt good to be back on Locked On Grizzlies today. Once again, I appreciate you guys. Appreciate all the messages and everything. We're going to keep this show rolling now. The numbers were fantastic, as Joe has already pointed out to you. And I just want you to hear it from B as well. We appreciate you for following Locked On Grizzlies, for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. And guess what? We'll see you tomorrow. So stay tuned for Locked On Grizzlies. Appreciate you once again. Damichael Cole tuning in to you here on Locked On Grizzlies. And we'll see you next time.